Look closely, everyone. A key, a torn cheque, and the deposit slip.
They say friends become family, but some friendships are poison wrapped in smiles. This is the story of a woman whose life was destroyed by the person she trusted most. A friend who stole from her, framed her, sent her brother to jail, and still had the audacity to invite her to the wedding she funded with stolen money. But what the bride didn't know was that the one thing she hid years ago was about to reappear in the middle of her own ceremony in front of hundreds. Stay with this story till the end, because what happened on that wedding stage will make you question every friend you've ever trusted. Some friendships are built on love. Others are built on lies. And when the foundation is rotten, even the most beautiful ceremony cannot hide the stench of betrayal. This is the story of two women who worked in the same office, wore the same uniform, smiled at the same meetings, but only one of them had a heart. The other had a plan. The air conditioning hummed softly in the glass tower on Victoria Island, Lagos. Outside, the city moved with its usual chaos. Yellow buses honking, vendors shouting, the heat rising from concrete like prayers no one heard. Inside, the office of Sterling & Cupboard Financial Services was a different world. Polished floors, imported furniture, the kind of place where people spoke in lowered voices and walked like they were auditioning for success. Grace Adebayo sat at her desk on the fourth floor, her fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. She had been with the company for 3 years, and in that time, she had earned something money could not buy: respect. Her colleagues came to her when the numbers refused to balance. Her managers trusted her with sensitive files. She never spoke loudly, never demanded attention, never wore clothes that screamed for validation. She simply worked. And excellence, the quiet kind, always finds a way to shine. Across from her, separated by a low partition and a universe of intention, sat Vanessa Cole. Vanessa was everything Grace was not. Her nails were long and painted in colors that changed weekly: neon pink, electric blue, gold with tiny diamonds embedded at the tips. Her weaves were Brazilian, installed fresh every month at a salon in Lekki, where they served champagne while you sat under the dryer. She wore perfume that entered a room 3 seconds before she did. Her laughter was loud, performative, the kind that made people turn their heads not because it was joyful, but because it demanded to be noticed. But beneath the noise, beneath the designer bags and the endless selfies, Vanessa was terrified. Terrified that people would see her for what she truly was: a woman who had built her entire identity on surfaces, on things that could be bought, posted, applauded. And when you live like that, you need someone to stand next to, someone whose light you can borrow, someone whose work you can take credit for when no one is watching. That someone was Grace. Vanessa called her my work bestie. She brought her lunch sometimes, jollof rice in a takeaway pack, nothing expensive, just enough to keep the illusion alive. She complimented Grace's modest dresses, always with a slight smile that could be read 2 ways. She asked for help constantly: a report due in an hour, a client presentation she had not prepared for, a meeting she had forgotten about. And Grace, kind and unsuspecting, always said yes, because that is what good people do. They help. They believe in the goodness of others until the evidence becomes too heavy to ignore. The trouble began in late September during the quarterly review. The conference room was packed. Senior management sat at the head of the table, their faces unreadable. The regional director, Mr. Kelvin Okoro, stood at the front with a tablet in his hand and a rare smile on his face. This quarter, he began, we've seen outstanding performance across several departments, but one person stands out, not just for meeting targets, but for consistency, integrity, and leadership. Grace felt her stomach tighten. She kept her eyes on the table. Grace Adebayo, Mr. Okoro continued, has been nominated by 3 different managers for the Employee Excellence Award. Her work on the Zenith portfolio saved us from a potential audit disaster. Her reports are flawless. Her attitude is exemplary. Grace, please stand. The room erupted in polite applause. Grace stood slowly, her cheeks burning. She was not comfortable with attention. She preferred to let her work speak. But as she glanced around the room, she saw something that made her heart sink. Vanessa was clapping, but her smile did not reach her eyes. After the meeting, Vanessa cornered her in the hallway. "Congrats, babe," she said, pulling Grace into a hug that felt like a performance. "You deserve it, honestly. You work so hard." "Thank you," Grace said quietly. I was hoping they'd recognize the work I did on the client merger, but..." Vanessa laughed. A sharp sound. "I guess they didn't notice." Grace did not respond, because she knew the truth. Vanessa had done nothing on that merger. Grace had stayed late for 2 weeks, fixing Vanessa's mistakes, rewriting proposals, reconciling accounts Vanessa had left in chaos. But she said nothing, because that is what Grace does. It covers, it absorbs, it protects. But covering for someone does not mean they are grateful. Sometimes it only makes them hate you more. That night, in her small but over-decorated apartment in Ikeya, Vanessa sat on her bed surrounded by open boxes, wigs on stands, and wedding magazines. Her phone screen glowed with posts about Grace's award. Hardworking, reliable, role model. She tossed the phone aside and opened her wedding planning notebook. Every page was red ink. Makeup, decor, pre-wedding trip, bridal shower, aso-ebi, photography. The numbers did not add up. Her salary couldn't touch it. Her rent was behind. Her car was on loan. Everything about her life was borrowed, except her pride. In 2 months, she was supposed to marry into real money. Daniel's parents expected a flawless, luxury wedding. Failure wasn't an option. Looking broke wasn't an option. So when she remembered the petty cash and reserves in the office safe, money she had seen Grace handle so many times, one terrible thought slipped in and refused to leave. She told herself it wouldn't be stealing, just borrowing. She would return it before anyone noticed. That's how she justified the idea the first night. Then by the second night, she wasn't just thinking about it anymore. She was planning. And then, one afternoon in early October, opportunity presented itself. Grace was out of the office, attending a seminar downtown. Vanessa had been asked to cover her duties, which included handling petty cash requests and processing reimbursements. The office safe was located in the finance room, a small space behind the HR department. Access was restricted, but Grace had shown her the process once, trusting her. Vanessa stood in front of the safe, her heart pounding. Inside were cash reserves meant for emergency operations, 4 million naira, kept on site for urgent client needs and unexpected expenses. It was audited every quarter, but the next audit was not scheduled until January. She told herself she would borrow it. Just borrow. She would replace it before anyone noticed. She would win a contract, get a bonus, something, anything. Her hands trembled as she opened the safe. She took 2 million naira in bundles, stuffing them into her handbag. She took the check meant for a vendor payment, tore off a piece to use later, and pocketed it. She scribbled a quick deposit slip in her own handwriting, then realized her mistake. Panic seized her. She looked around the room. She needed to hide the evidence. The key, the slip, the torn check. If anyone found them, she was finished. She ran back to her desk, grabbed her bag, and rushed home. Her apartment was a mess. Wedding magazines everywhere, fabric samples, shoeboxes. She tore open her wardrobe, looking for a place to hide everything. Her eyes landed on an old pair of sandals in the corner, worn out, forgotten, the kind she had not worn in years. She pulled the inner sole loose, stuffed the safe key, the check scrap, and the deposit slip inside. then pressed the sole back down. She shoved the shoes to the back of the wardrobe behind her new wedding heels and designer bags. No one would ever look there. She collapsed onto her bed, her chest heaving. She had done it. She had stolen. But she told herself it was not stealing. It was survival. 2 weeks later, the audit was moved up. A senior director from the head office in Abuja arrived unannounced. Someone had tipped them off. An anonymous email claiming financial irregularities. Vanessa's stomach dropped when she heard the news. By noon, the safe had been opened. The money was missing. By evening, HR was interrogating everyone who had access. And by the next morning, they were looking at Grace. Because Grace had been the last person logged into the finance system before the money disappeared. Her name was on the access sheet. Her fingerprints were on the safe handle. Vanessa had made sure of that. She had logged into Grace's account 2 days after the theft, using the password Grace had once shared with her during a moment of trust. She had opened and closed files, created a digital trail that pointed directly at Grace. And when HR called Grace into the office, Vanessa stood outside the conference room, her arms crossed, her face painted with false concern. "I can't believe this," she whispered to a colleague. Grace seemed so trustworthy. Inside, Grace sat across from 3 stone-faced managers. "We have evidence," Mr. Okoro said, his voice cold. "Your login, your access, your fingerprints." "I didn't take anything," Grace said, her voice shaking. "I swear, I would never." "Then explain how 2 million naira disappeared on your watch." She could not. Because the truth was hidden in a shoe she did not know existed. They suspended her immediately. No pay, pending investigation. She walked out of the building in the middle of the afternoon, her hands empty, her heart shattered. Colleagues who had smiled at her that morning now looked away. Whispers followed her to the elevator. And Vanessa? Vanessa watched from her desk, sipping her iced latte, her lips curled into the smallest, cruelest smile. There are different kinds of pain. The kind that makes you scream. The kind that makes you cry. And then there is the kind that makes you silent, because your body knows that sound will not help, that no one is coming, that you are alone in this. Grace sat in her 1-bedroom apartment in Yaba, staring at the wall. It had been 3 days since the suspension. 3 days since her world collapsed. She had not eaten. She had not showered. She had only sat there, replaying every moment, every conversation, every time she had helped Vanessa, every time she had trusted her. Her phone buzzed constantly. Messages from colleagues asking if it was true. Messages from church members who had heard rumors. Messages from her mother, who did not understand what was happening, but could hear the fear in Grace's voice. And then, on the 4th day, the knock came. It was early morning. The sun had barely risen. Grace opened the door to find 2 police officers standing there, their faces hard and unreadable. "Grace Adebayo?" one of them asked. "Yes," she whispered. "We need to speak with your brother." Her heart stopped. "My brother? What does he have to do with—" "He's been accused of holding stolen funds. We have a tip that you gave him money from your office." Her knees buckled. "That's not true. That's a lie. Who told you that?" They did not answer. They pushed past her into the apartment. Her younger brother Michael was still asleep in the small room they shared. He was 19, a student at the University of Lagos, studying engineering. He was quiet, brilliant, the kind of boy who spent his evenings reading textbooks and helping neighbors fix broken electronics for free. The officers dragged him out of bed. They handcuffed him in front of Grace, ignoring her screams, her pleading, her tears. "Please," she begged, "he's innocent. He's just a student. He doesn't know anything about this." "Tell that to the station," one officer said coldly. They took him. Grace collapsed on the floor, her body shaking. She could not breathe. She could not think. This was not just about her anymore. They were coming for her family. The tip had been anonymous. But Grace knew. Deep in her soul, she knew. Vanessa. At the police station in Sabo, Michael sat in a small hot room with no windows. They questioned him for hours. Where was the money? Who gave it to him? What did he do with it? He said the same thing over and over. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm a student. I don't have any money. But they did not believe him. Or maybe they did not care. One officer slapped him across the face. Another kicked his chair. They wanted a confession. They wanted someone to blame. And in a system where justice is slow and corruption is fast, the easiest person to blame is the one who cannot fight back. Grace's mother, Mrs. Comfort Adebayo, heard the news that evening. She was a petty trader in Balogan Market, selling fabrics and wrappers to women who haggled over every naira. She had raised her children alone after their father died. She had scraped and suffered and prayed them into education, into dignity. And now her son was in chains. She fainted in the middle of the market. Her friends carried her to a nearby chemist, fanning her with newspapers, pouring water on her face. When she woke, she wept so loudly that customers stopped shopping. She wept for her son. She wept for her daughter. She wept because she did not understand how goodness could be punished this way. Grace sat in her apartment, staring at her phone, her hands shaking. She had no money for a lawyer, no money for bail, no money for food. She had been suspended without pay, and her savings were nearly gone. And then her phone buzzed. It was a message from Vanessa. Hey babe, I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. This must be so hard for you. If you need anything, let me know. You're still my friend. Grace stared at the message for a long time. Then she threw her phone across the room. Because there are some lies so evil, so calculated, that they do not deserve a response. Vanessa knew exactly what she had done. She had stolen the money. She had framed Grace. She had tipped off the police. And now she was pretending to care. But why? Because cruelty is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it wears a smile. Sometimes it sends heart emojis while it destroys you. A week later, Michael was released, not because of justice, but because there was no evidence. The police had nothing. No money, no proof. Just a tip from an anonymous caller who had disappeared into the noise of Lagos. But the damage was done. Michael returned home bruised, silent, broken. He would not speak. He would not eat. He sat in the corner of their apartment, staring at nothing, his eyes empty. Grace held him and wept. Their mother came to visit, her face aged 10 years in 10 days. She knelt in front of her children and prayed in a voice that shook the walls. God of heaven, she cried, if my children are innocent, prove it. If someone has done this wickedness, expose them. Let the truth come out. Let justice find us. Even if we are poor, even if we are forgotten, let the world see that you are still God. And then 2 weeks later, the invitation came. It was delivered in a small gold envelope, embossed with elegant lettering. Grace opened it, slowly, her hands trembling. You are cordially invited to the wedding of Miss Vanessa Cole and Mr. Daniel Okonkwo. At the bottom, written in Vanessa's handwriting, Grace, you've always been like a sister to me. Please come. I need you there. It wouldn't be the same without you. Grace read it 3 times. She wanted to tear it. She wanted to burn it. But something stopped her. Because deep down, she knew why Vanessa had invited her. Not because she wanted her there, but because she wanted to humiliate her one last time. Act 3. The key in the shoe evil is patient. It plans, it calculates, it knows exactly where to cut so that the wound never fully heals. And Vanessa Cole had mastered the art of calculated cruelty. She sat in her living room, surrounded by chaos. Her wedding was 3 weeks away, and the pressure was suffocating. Boxes everywhere, dresses hanging from doors, shoes piled in corners. Her phone rang constantly, Vendors demanding payment, coordinators asking for confirmation, bridesmaids complaining about the ASO-EBI fabric. Her fiancé, Daniel, barely noticed. He was busy with business trips, leaving Vanessa to handle everything. His family had already paid for the venue, the food, the drinks. But they expected perfection. They expected a bride who looked expensive, who moved with elegance, who could stand next to their son without shame. Vanessa had to deliver. She had spent the stolen money well. The makeup artist was booked. The pre-wedding photos had been shot in Zanzibar. White beaches, blue water, designer swimsuits. The bridal shower had been a champagne-soaked spectacle at a rooftop lounge in Ikoyi. Her bridesmaids had been showered with gifts, matching robes, personalized bags, expensive jewelry. But there was one last detail: the bridesmaid shoes. Vanessa had ordered them from a boutique in Lekki. Silver heels, custom-made, elegant enough to match her vision. When they arrived, she opened the boxes with satisfaction. Perfect, but she had 9 bridesmaids, and only 8 pairs of shoes had arrived. "Stupid people," she muttered, dialing the boutique. They apologized, promised to send the missing pair in 2 days. But Vanessa could not wait. She needed everything packed and ready now. She called her housekeeper Ruth, a quiet woman in her 40s who had worked for Vanessa for 2 years. "Ruth!" Vanessa shouted from the bedroom. Ruth appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. "Yes, Ma. I need you to pack all the bridesmaid gifts, dresses, shoes, jewelry, everything. Put them in the labeled boxes. I want them ready by tomorrow morning." "Yes, Ma," Ruth said. "And check the wardrobe. There are some extra shoes in there. Pack any that are silver or neutral. I need 9 pairs. Don't ask questions. Just do it." Ruth nodded and got to work. She opened Vanessa's wardrobe, a massive walk-in closet filled with clothes, bags, and shoes. Some still had tags. Some were worn once and forgotten. Ruth had learned not to judge. Rich people wasted things. That was just how they lived. She found the 8 pairs from the boutique, neatly boxed. Then she looked for a 9th pair. At the back of the wardrobe, behind a pile of handbags, she found an old pair of sandals. They were silver, slightly worn, but still decent. Ruth assumed they were part of the collection. She picked them up, felt something shift inside one of the soles, but thought nothing of it. Shoes always felt strange when they were old. She packed them into a gift box, wrapped it with ribbon, and labeled it for Grace, because Vanessa had specifically said, "Make sure Grace's box is ready first. I want her to feel special." Ruth did not know why. She did not ask. She just obeyed. The next morning, Vanessa's driver delivered the boxes to each bridesmaid's home. Grace's box arrived in the afternoon. She stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside was a silver dress, a small jewelry set, and a pair of shoes. Grace lifted the shoes slowly. They were beautiful, delicate, the kind of shoes she would never buy for herself. For a moment, she felt something close to sadness. Because even now, even after everything, Vanessa was still pretending they were friends. She tried the left shoe first. It fit perfectly. Then she tried the right shoe. Something felt wrong. It was heavier, uneven, like there was something inside. Grace frowned. She pressed the sole, felt a hard lump beneath the padding. She pulled at the inner lining, and it came loose easily, as if it had been opened before. And then she saw it. A small silver key. Her breath caught. She pulled it out slowly, her hands trembling. It was labeled, engraved on the side in tiny letters, "Sterling & Co. Finance safe." Her heart stopped. She reached back into the shoe, her fingers trembling, and pulled out 2 more items. A torn piece of paper, part of a cheque. The company logo was still visible. The amount, 2 million naira. Dated the exact week the money went missing, and beneath that, a handwritten deposit slip. The handwriting was not hers. It was Vanessa's. Grace dropped the shoe. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold the evidence. She sat on the floor, staring at the item spread in front of her, her mind racing. This was it. This was the proof. The key. The check. The slip. Everything that had destroyed her life. Everything that had sent her brother to jail. Everything that had broken her mother's heart. It was all here, hidden in a shoe, wrapped in a gift box, delivered to her door like a message from God. She did not know whether to laugh or cry. She did neither. She simply sat there, silent, as the weight of the truth settled over her like a blanket. And then, slowly, she reached for her phone. She took pictures. Every angle. The key. The check. The slip. The shoe. She saved them in 3 separate folders, backed them up to the cloud, sent copies to her email. And then she made a decision. She would not go to the police. She would not go to the company. She would not call Vanessa and scream at her. She would go to the wedding. Because some truths are not meant to be whispered in private. Some truths are meant to be shouted in public, in front of everyone, so that no one can deny them, so that no one can twist them, so that the world can see exactly who you are. Vanessa wanted to humiliate her? Fine. Grace would let her. But when the time came, when the cameras were rolling, when the guests were watching, when Vanessa was at her happiest, Grace would show everyone what kind of woman she really was. Not with anger, not with violence, with evidence. The day of the wedding arrived like a storm dressed in silk. The venue was the Grand Imperial Hotel in Victoria Island, a towering structure of glass and gold that overlooked the Atlantic Ocean. The ballroom could hold 500 guests, and every seat was filled. Politicians, business executives, society women and gals so tall they could barely fit through doorways. Photographers everywhere, capturing every moment for Instagram, for blogs, for the kind of wedding coverage that would trend for weeks. Outside, a red carpet stretched from the entrance to the ballroom. A live band played high-life music. Ushers in matching uniforms directed guests to their seats. Everything was perfect. Everything was expensive. Everything screamed, "This is the wedding of the year." Inside, Vanessa stood in the bridal suite, surrounded by her bridesmaids. Her makeup was flawless. Her skin glowed like she had been dipped in honey. Her lashes were long enough to cast shadows. Her lips painted a deep red that matched the roses in her bouquet. Her dress was custom-made, imported from Dubai, covered in crystals that caught the light every time she moved. She looked like a queen. She felt like one, too. "You look amazing," one of her bridesmaids gushed. "Stunning," another agreed. Vanessa smiled, turning slowly in front of the mirror. She had won. She had gotten away with everything. The stolen money had funded this perfection. Grace was ruined. Her brother was traumatized. And here she was, about to marry into wealth, about to step into a life where she would never have to worry about money again. She had invited Grace not out of kindness, but out of cruelty. She wanted her to see this. She wanted her to sit in the back row and watch as Vanessa ascended into everything she would never have. "Where's Grace?" Vanessa asked suddenly. One of the bridesmaids checked her phone. "She just arrived. She's outside." Vanessa's smile widened. "Good. Make sure she sits in the back, far back, where no one important can see her." Grace walked into the ballroom wearing the silver dress Vanessa had sent her. It fit well, but it felt like a costume. She was not here to celebrate. She was here for justice. She carried a small purse, and inside that purse, wrapped in the tissue paper, was the shoe. The right shoe. The one with the hidden compartment. The one that held the key, the check, the deposit slip. She had left the other shoe at home. She only needed one. An usher led her to the back of the hall, to a row far from the main stage, far from the high table where Daniel's family sat. She sat down quietly, her hands folded in her lap, her face calm. Around her, guests chatted and laughed. The energy was electric. Everyone was waiting for the bride to make her entrance. And then, the music changed. The doors at the back of the hall opened, and Vanessa appeared. The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. People stood to get a better view. Vanessa walked slowly down the aisle, her train trailing behind her like a river of silk, her smile wide and triumphant. She reached the altar, where Daniel stood waiting, handsome in his tailored suit. He took her hand, and the pastor began the ceremony. Grace watched it all in silence. The vows, the rings, the kiss, the pronouncement, "I now present to you Mr. and Mrs. Okonkwo." More applause, more pictures. The couple walked back down the aisle together, waving to the crowd like celebrities. The reception began immediately. Food was served on china plates. Champagne flowed. The live band played. Daniel and Vanessa danced their first dance, spinning under chandeliers, their movements rehearsed and perfect. And then, Vanessa decided it was time for the real entertainment. She grabbed the microphone from the MC and smiled at the crowd. "Before we continue," she said, her voice sweet and poisonous, "I want to take a moment to appreciate my bridesmaids. These ladies have been with me through everything. They are my sisters, my support system." The bridesmaids cheered. "But there's one person here," Vanessa continued, "who I need to give a special shout-out to. Someone who has been so loyal, so humble, so patient." Grace's stomach tightened. "Grace Adebayo," Vanessa called out, scanning the crowd. "Where are you, babe? Stand up." Heads turned, whispers spread. Grace remained seated. "Come on, Grace," Vanessa said, her voice dripping with false warmth. "Don't be shy. Come to the front." Slowly, Grace stood. Every eye in the room was on her. She walked down the aisle, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor, her purse clutched tightly in her hand. When she reached the front, Vanessa pulled her into a hug, holding the microphone away so the crowd could not hear her whisper. "Smile. Everyone is watching." Grace pulled back, her face calm. Vanessa handed her the microphone. "Say something. Tell everyone how amazing this day is." Grace held the microphone, her hand steady. The room was silent, waiting. And then she knelt down. Vanessa's smile faltered. "What are you?" Grace reached into her purse, pulled out the shoe, and held it up for everyone to see. The crowd murmured, confused, curious. "This shoe," Grace said, her voice clear and calm, "was given to me by the bride. A gift. For being such a loyal friend." Vanessa's face went pale. Grace continued, "But there's something inside this shoe. Something that Vanessa didn't know was there. Something she hid. Something that destroyed my life." She opened the hidden compartment in the heel, slowly, deliberately, and pulled out the key. It gleamed under the lights. "This," Grace said, holding it up, "is the key to the finance safe at Sterling & Co., where I used to work, where 2 million naira went missing, where I was accused, where my brother was arrested and beaten, where my mother collapsed from grief." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Grace pulled out the torn check next. "This is part of the check that was stolen, signed by the company, dated the exact week the money disappeared." She held up the deposit slip. "And this is a deposit slip, written in Vanessa's handwriting. Proof that she took the money. Proof that she framed me. Proof that she let an innocent boy suffer. Proof that she built this entire wedding on lies and stolen money." The room exploded. Vanessa lunged for the microphone, but Grace stepped back. "You're lying," Vanessa screamed. "She's lying. She's trying to ruin my wedding. She's jealous." But Daniel was already walking toward them, his face hard. His mother stood from the high table, her hand over her mouth. His father's expression was unreadable, but his jaw was clenched. Security moved in, but Daniel waved them off. "Is this true?" he asked Vanessa, his voice cold. "No. Baby, no. She's making it up. Then explain the key," Daniel said. "Explain the handwriting." Vanessa opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out the wedding ring he had just placed on her finger minutes ago, and took it back. "This marriage is over," he said quietly. He turned and walked out of the ballroom. His family followed. The guests erupted into chaos. Phones came out. Videos started recording. Vanessa fell to her knees, screaming, sobbing, reaching for Daniel, but he did not look back. Grace stood there, holding the shoe, holding the evidence, her face calm. And then she turned and walked toward the exit. The crowd parted for her. No one spoke. No one stopped her. As she reached the door, someone started clapping. Then another person. Then another. By the time she stepped outside, the applause was deafening, not because they celebrated the scandal, but because they had just witnessed something rare in a world full of lies. The truth. The video went viral within hours. By midnight, it had been shared across every social media platform. By morning, it was on blogs, news sites, radio talk shows. Everyone in Lagos was talking about the bride who was exposed at her own wedding. The stolen money, the framed coworker, the hidden key in the shoe. Vanessa became the most hated woman in the city overnight. Sterling and Coher reopened the investigation immediately. With the evidence Grace provided, the case was clear. Vanessa Cole had stolen company funds, framed an innocent employee, and caused immeasurable harm to Grace and her family. The company issued a public apology to Grace. They reinstated her with full back pay, a promotion, and a formal letter clearing her name. The CEO himself called her personally, expressing his regret and offering her any support she needed. But it was not the company that changed Grace's life. It was Daniel's father. Mr. Emmanuel Okonkwo was a man of power and influence, the kind of man who built empires with a handshake. He had been humiliated at his son's wedding, but he was also impressed. Impressed by Grace's composure, impressed by her integrity, impressed by the fact that she had every reason to seek revenge, to cause chaos, to destroy Vanessa publicly. But instead, she had simply told the truth. He called Grace 2 weeks after the wedding. "Miss Adebayo," he said, his voice deep and measured, "I would like to offer you a position in my company, head of financial operations, double your current salary, full benefits, and a personal apology for what my family put you through, even indirectly." Grace was silent for a moment. Then she said, "Thank you, sir, but I need one more thing." "Name it." "My brother. He was traumatized by what happened. He dropped out of school. He needs help, therapy, support, a future." "Done," Mr. Okonkwo said without hesitation. "I will personally fund his education, any school he wants, and I will make sure he has access to the best counseling available." Grace closed her eyes. "Thank you." "No," Mr. Okonkwo said. "Thank you for reminding me that character still matters." Grace accepted the offer. Within a month, she was working in a new office, leading a new team, earning more money than she had ever imagined. Her mother wept with joy. Her brother slowly began to heal, enrolling in therapy and eventually returning to his studies. Vanessa, meanwhile, disappeared. Daniel had annulled the marriage immediately. His family cut all ties. Her friends abandoned her. The companies she owed money to came after her. She lost her apartment, her car, everything. She moved back to her mother's small flat in Mushin, the same place she had spent years trying to escape. But Grace did not celebrate her downfall. She did not post about it. She did not gloat. Because revenge is not the same as justice, and justice does not require cruelty. 6 months later, Grace was leaving her office when she saw a familiar figure standing by the gate. Vanessa. She looked different, thinner, older. Her hair was natural, pulled back in a simple bun. No makeup, no designer clothes, just a plain dress and worn-out shoes. Grace stopped walking. Vanessa looked up, her eyes red and swollen. "Grace," she whispered, "please, I need to talk to you." Grace stood there for a long moment, her face unreadable. Then she nodded. "5 minutes." They walked to a nearby bench, under a tree that provided shade from the Legos heat. Vanessa sat down slowly, as if her body was carrying weight that could not be seen. "I'm sorry," Vanessa said, her voice breaking. "I know that's not enough. I know words can't fix what I did, but I need you to know. I'm sorry. For everything. For the money. For framing you. For your brother. For your mother. For being the kind of person who could do that to someone who was only ever kind to me." Grace looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, she did not see the loud, flashy woman who had tormented her. She saw someone broken, someone who had gambled everything on a lie and lost. "Why did you do it?" Grace asked quietly. Vanessa wiped her eyes. "Because I was scared. Scared that people would see I was nothing. That I had nothing. That without the clothes and the makeup and the noise, I was just empty. And when you got that award, when people celebrated you, I realized something that terrified me." "What?" "That you didn't need any of it. You were loved because of who you were. And I could never be that. So I tried to destroy you instead." Silence stretched between them like a wound that had not yet healed. "I lost everything," Vanessa continued. "The wedding, the man, my reputation, my friends. I deserved it. I know I did. But Grace, I don't know how to live with what I've done. I don't know how to wake up every day knowing I destroyed someone's life for a wedding that lasted 3 hours." Grace took a deep breath. "I forgive you, Vanessa." Vanessa looked up, shocked. "What?" "I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to carry hate in my heart. I refuse to let what you did define the rest of my life. I forgive you because holding on to anger would only hurt me, not you." Tears streamed down Vanessa's face. "Thank you. Thank you. Can we start over? Can we be friends again?" Grace stood up slowly, smoothing her dress. She looked down at Vanessa with a sadness that was not unkind, but was final. "No," she said gently. "Forgiveness is not the same as restoration. I forgive you, but I will never trust you again. And I will never allow you back into my life. Because some people, once they show you who they are, you have to believe them. Not with bitterness, just with wisdom." Vanessa nodded, her shoulders shaking with sobs. Grace turned to leave, then paused. "Vanessa? Yes? I hope you find peace, real peace. Not the kind that comes from things or status or approval, but the kind that comes from knowing who you are and being okay with it. Because until you do, you'll keep hurting people. And eventually, the only person left to hurt will be yourself." Grace walked away, her heels clicking softly on the pavement, her head held high. Vanessa sat on that bench for a long time, watching her go, knowing she would never see her again. 2 years later, Grace stood on a stage at a women's leadership conference in Abuja. The auditorium was filled with hundreds of young women, students, entrepreneurs, professionals, all looking up at her with expectant faces. The moderator smiled. "Grace, your story has inspired so many people. But I have to ask, when you were at your lowest point, when you had been framed, when your brother was arrested, when everything seemed hopeless, what kept you going?" Grace paused, thinking back to those dark days. The suspension, the shame, the fear, the nights when she cried so hard she thought she might break. "I kept going," she said slowly, "because I knew the truth. And the truth, no matter how long it takes, always finds a way to come out. It might hide in a shoe for weeks. It might wait for the perfect moment, but it never stays buried forever." The audience leaned forward. "I also learned something important," Grace continued. "People will betray you. People will lie about you. People will try to destroy you because your light makes them uncomfortable. But you cannot control what others do. You can only control how you respond. And I chose to respond with dignity, not because I was strong, but because I refused to become the kind of person who hurt me." Applause filled the room. One more thing, Grace said, her voice firm. Be very careful who you call a friend. Friendship is not about matching outfits or Instagram posts or who invites you to parties. Real friendship is tested in private, in the moments when no one is watching, in the choices people make when it costs them something to stand by you. And if someone can betray you for money, for status, for attention, they were never your friend. They were just using you as a ladder. The applause grew louder. As Grace left the stage, her phone buzzed. It was a message from her brother, Michael. He had just graduated top of his class in engineering, earned a scholarship to study abroad, and landed a job at one of the biggest tech companies in Africa. The message read, "Thank you for never giving up on me. You saved my life." Grace smiled, her eyes filling with tears, because that was the real victory. Not the job, not the money, not the viral video or the public vindication. The real victory was that she had survived. She had healed. She had risen. And in a world that often rewards the loudest voice, the flashiest appearance, the most convincing lie, she had proven that truth, quiet and patient, always wins in the end. Michael had his future back. Her mother was at peace. And Grace had learned that some betrayals are not meant to destroy you. They are meant to reveal who people really are and who you are capable of becoming. She had walked through fire and come out refined, not burned. She had been humiliated and came out dignified. She had been framed by a friend and freed by the very weapon meant to destroy her. Because sometimes God hides your deliverance in the last place your enemy would ever think to look. Sometimes justice is wrapped in ribbon and delivered to your door. Sometimes the truth is hidden in a shoe, and when the time is right, when the world is watching, when evil thinks it has won, that is when you open the heel, pull out the key, and show everyone exactly what was hidden in the darkness. Not with anger, not with bitterness, but with the calm, unshakable confidence of someone who knows that lies may run fast, but the truth always catches up. Some friendships are blessings, others are lessons. Choose wisely, because the person you trust with your secrets might be the same person hiding their sins in a shoe. And one day, when they least expect it, that shoe will walk right back to them. Be careful who you call friend. Be careful who you trust. Be careful who you help. Because in this life, not everyone clapping for you wants you to win. Some are just waiting for you to fall. But if you stand firm, if you hold on to your integrity, if you refuse to let bitterness poison your soul, God will expose every lie, even the ones hidden in a shoe. If this story shook you even a little, don't just scroll away. Hit subscribe so you never miss the next episode, because every week we expose the kind of betrayals people pretend don't exist. Drop a comment. Has a friend ever shown you their true colors? Your comment might appear in our next video. And remember, protect your peace. Choose your circle wisely, because not everyone clapping for you wants you to win.